Please take a minute and look around the room, see who's here tonight. I know we have some new faces, so if you see somebody that you don't recognize, please share a smile and introduce yourself a little bit later. Hi to the Zoomers. Hi, everybody. Make yourself comfortable. If you need something, now would be the time to get that. Welcome to Ward and Gale. Glad you're home safely. Good to see you. So tonight, well, first of all, welcome to Insight Meditation Community of Charlotte. My name is Thia, and I'm happy to be your Dharma leader for the evening. I'd like to open with an excerpt from one of my favorite writers, Maria Popova, who writes a blog of ephemera that is so interesting to me. And what she wrote today was spot on for tonight's talk, so I had to steal the first sentence. She writes, "Autumn is the season of ambivalence and reconciliation, a soft carpeted training ground for the dissolution that awaits us all." Can't you just see the leaves falling and landing quietly or not so quietly? So recently, I received an email letter from Adya Shanti, a spiritual leader that I have been following for some time now. He sent the letter out to all of his students in his large Sangha after he had been on sabbatical for a year, and he only recently returned to live teaching just a few months ago. Now, I've had a lot of teachers, but I consider Adya my root teacher. In many Eastern spiritual traditions, your root teacher is the one who introduces you to a fundamental wisdom, to the essential nature of your mind. In other words, this person sets you on the path towards discovering the ultimate truth. And that's a pretty big gift to give somebody. So if you're lucky, there's a person in your life that has shared a great truth or showed you or taught you something that really mattered to you. And that something fundamentally changed the way that you thought and felt and acted. And so these are the people that we tend to hold in high esteem and really close to our hearts. And they may not even know that they've had this impact on us. This is the case with Adya Shanti. This is also one reason that right speech and right action are so important for everybody, all the practitioners of the Buddha Dharma, since we never know how our words or actions are going to land with others and what lasting, encouraging or discouraging effects they might have. This is why kindness is the key. So the talk I want to bring tonight concerns loss and surrender and an invitation to a deeper practice using these two inevitable parts of life. So I'll ask you now to close your eyes again. And please think of a loss that you've experienced, either recently or in the past. Choose something that has stuck with you. And now notice if you can sense this in your body, if you can feel that loss physically in your body or the residue of that. And finally, ask yourself, have I made peace with this? And if so, how long did it take? And you can open your eyes now, whether that reconciliation was 10 days or 10 years, We need to make peace with our losses, lay down disappointments and dependencies, and come to terms with the fact that nothing, absolutely nothing, lasts. The fact that everything must change is kind of a big deal and not. On the one hand, it's a big deal. On the other hand, it's simply the truth. Making peace with loss and disappointment is something that I'd like to label as surrender tonight. This is something I've recently experienced. Surrender means we go past the idea that things need to be different than they are, and we move into fully accepting that this is how it is right now. Surrender is what loss always demands of us. And it's defined as conceding or yielding or submitting, giving in or giving over, none of which sound all that appealing, really, and are not held in such high regard today. Sometimes even in the face of overwhelming evidence that it is perhaps past time to concede. So where am I going with this? I'm telling you this because of this recent letter from Adyashanti. This letter told me that after close to 30 years of teaching, he is effective tonight, October 4th, 2023, stepping away from his public life and public teaching. As I read this, I felt a rush of sadness, and I cried, much to my surprise. Things are changing, and they're changing in a way that I don't like. Some people hold a place in your heart that is beyond romantic love or brotherly love. We often fall in love with our teachers. It's one of the things that spiritual teachers are warned about in training. As people on the path discover that their true nature is boundlessness, is love, is kindness and compassion, they may conflate that message with the messenger. Transference, I believe it's called. Adyashanti teaches or says, the truth I point to is not confined within any religious point of view, within any belief system or doctrine. It is open to all, and it is found within each of us. As the tears rolled down my cheeks, I felt hollowed out inside. What will I do? I thought. No more Sunday Dharma chats, no more live videos late on Wednesday nights. This is where it dawned on me that my tears were the sense of me losing something, someone that feels dear, when in fact he is not going anywhere. He's still alive. He's still living in California with his wife, Mukti, who will teach and take over. I was suddenly, though, present to a form of selfishness, that it was simply not my preference for this person to retire. That was the truth. Yes, he taught profound things and touched me deeply, but it really boils down to it's not my preference for him to take a well-deserved break. Before taking out a big stick and beating myself up over this, for literally crying about it, I thought about all the years of his patient and kind question and answer and his skillful ability to keep it playful and light, even though we were usually talking about the meaning of life. I wondered, maybe all of these feelings come from love, from the largeness of this love. The love is not leaving, it's still there. Even so, a lot of big emotional energies had come to the table. So how do we work with it when we have a tangle of emotional energies? Present for me for the past few days have been sadness, grief, disappointment, like a committee sitting around my table, and deep gratitude and love. How can I engage with these strong feelings and stay engaged without taking it too far. Maybe I can cultivate something wholesome. Who knows? This, for me, is what practice is about. So obviously, the next best thing was to cry again, simply let the loss and the gratitude and the love build up and flow through me. I was safe in my office. No one could see or hear me, I hoped. So it was a perfectly good time to wail. Shortly, I knew it had run its course. Cathartic. I rarely cry like that. As a matter of fact, I don't think I cried that way when my own father died. I could hear the three conditions of existence whispering in my mind. All of life is imperfect. All of life is impermanent. And all of life is impersonal. I could sit with this now, just the way it is. My new reality, and this too is Dharma. So the bigger question for us all may be, how do we work with loss if it is the inevitable outcome? How do we pay attention in a way that deepens our engagement with mindfulness and feeds our inquiry? And is it wholesome, cultivating a habit of mind that is beneficial and not simply indulgent? Because we can wallow in sadness. I know I can sometimes. Some of you may be thinking about this time, goodness, was it really that big of a deal? Well, we each face our own losses, and some are quite devastating, much more complex and long lasting than the one I've just described to you tonight. But I think that we get to practice with these lesser losses because they do cut and they are difficult. And sometimes they catch us off balance. So maybe this example can offer a sense of how to approach a sudden and significant loss, whether it be the death of a beloved, the loss of a pet, or maybe even our own declining health. Life is paved with these kinds of losses. They are, in fact, an inevitable outcome. This is when the teachings of the Buddha come alive in their usefulness. To be able to deepen our experience with pain or loss or disappointment, we can start by getting curious. Where is it held in the body? How do I carry it? For me, it was in the heart, and my limbs felt really heavy. And I noticed that I wanted to sleep a lot for the next few days. Next, we can take it to the cushion and watch it in our practice. I think it's called All the Feels now, or something like that. I noticed it plunged me, all these feelings plunged me into an easy introspection on my cushion, into a quietude that was very conducive to meditation as I explored one feeling after the next, and they simply left after they'd been examined. We can look for insights that these kinds of losses bring us. One of the insights that came to me is the realization that I was looking outside of myself for wisdom, that I had developed a dependence on this teacher for a sense of safety, of knowing, like he was some kind of spiritual health insurance. I've always known that if I hit something that I really couldn't figure out, I could email Adya and maybe he would answer, or he might choose my question. Choosing my question was like winning the lottery. I saw my ego's satisfaction in having my question chosen and read before a large crowd of folks that gather for his talks. Now, that will never happen again. In hindsight, I can see right through this needing to be seen by the teacher. Rainer Maria Rilke writes, be patient with all that is unsolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves. In a passage from one of the letters to the Corinthians, Paul wrote, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. And the Buddha's very last words were on this subject of standing in our own 2 feet spiritually. We're here tonight in this Zoom room and in this meditation hall, surrounded by examples of the Buddha. And we all have many beloved teachers that we follow, hopefully. And we have the embodiment of the teachings in each other and the companionship of followers on this path. This is known as the Triple Gem, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Let's take a peek at the transcript from this last conversation the Buddha had as he lay dying. As he surrendered himself to non-being, this is found in a sutta called the Maha Parinibbana, which means the really big Nibbana. As recounted by historians, he gathered with his monks, encouraged them to continue practicing everything he'd taught them. He said, "I was only able to point the way for you." He furthered, "All things, all experiences, mental and physical, all phenomena by their very nature, decay and die. All are dissolving, all are disappointing. Strive on with diligence to obtain liberation." So, according to scholars, these were his last words. Everyone was probably standing around saying, "But aren't you going to appoint someone to carry on the teachings?" And he chose to not do that. He put it on each of us to work it out for ourselves with the triple gems. 2 frequent names of the Buddha were Tathagata and Sugata. Gata means gone. So these 2 names mean thus gone and well gone. Tathagata is said to be trackless in that he leaves no signs behind him and produces no more karma. So the Buddha is reported to have said in the Majjhima Nikaya 101, "When I strive with determination, some particular sources of suffering fade away in me. Because of that determined striving, in this way, suffering is exhausted." And I love that because, most of us find suffering exhausting, right? It's hard to carry these burdens, but he's saying sitting with suffering, being with it, bearing with it, exhausts the suffering. He frequently said that his teachings were ehipassiko. They are an invitation to come and see for yourself. So even if these words have undergone changes and contortions over the past 2,600 years, there is always this test for us. What happens when we examine our senses? What happens when we sober up from our long intoxication with experiences? And what happens when we allow our bodies to become calm and our minds to become concentrated? What happens? Thank you for your attention, kind attention.